Wall Street Journal reporting on a birthday letter that Donald Trump sent Jeffrey Epstein for his 50th birthday. Ghislaine Maxwell collected that and other letters for a 2003 birthday album. That's according to documents reviewed by the Wall Street Journal. Pages from the album are among the documents examined by Justice Department officials who investigated Epstein and Maxwell years ago, according to people who have reviewed the pages. Here's how the Journal describes the letter Donald Trump wrote to Jeffrey Epstein. Quote, "The letter bearing Trump's name, which was reviewed by the Journal, is bawdy, like others in the album. It contains several lines of typewritten text framed by the outline of a naked woman, which appears to be hand-drawn with a heavy marker. A pair of small arcs denotes the woman's breasts, and the future president's signature is a squiggly Donald below her waist, mimicking pubic hair. The letter concludes, 'Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret.' In an interview with the Journal, Trump denied writing the letter or drawing that picture. He told the Journal he was preparing to file a lawsuit if it published an article. Back with us, Yvonne Hilliard and Angelo Corazon.
Okay, so this is obviously just breaking. I know you all have had an opportunity to take a gander. What stuck out to me from this story is that the Justice Department officials, obviously, the Wall Street Journal reached out to them, and according to the Journal, they didn't respond to requests for comment or address questions about whether the Trump page and other pages of the birthday album were part of the agency's recent documents review. The FBI also declined to comment. Vaughn, do you have anything from the White House on this yet?
No, not yet. And it should be assumed that not only did this Department of Justice, but also the Biden Department of Justice had these contents here. I think that this is the important context, is that in so many reasons, it has been clear that there are still Epstein files that have been redacted for the sake of victims' names, for instance. There are other files, though, and that has not kept others from arguing that even the mentioning of names, potential clients, right, should be revealed. Information like this, that the Wall Street Journal clearly made the decision that it was worth reporting out at a time that the president has vehemently denied having close friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. Clearly, the Wall Street Journal making the decision with their reporting that this was a valuable information at a time that the president has denied ever engaging in any improper relations. I think it's worth also going back, though, in this context to in October of 2002 in a New York Magazine profile. At the time, then real estate mogul Donald Trump, he said, quote, "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It has even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it. Jeffrey enjoys his social life." Clearly, these two men, including in video that NBC News shot more than 25 years ago, you see them dancing as they're appearing to point at women who are in the same room as them. We know that these two men had a relationship, and that clearly that there were conversations that were in nature of women. In this particular instance with the Wall Street Journal, I think it's important to note that the president has denied that he was the one that authored this particular letter or drew this caricature of a female body. At the same time, it lends the question of what other details does the Department of Justice have about the relationship of Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump. Even if it was not criminal in nature, is there more to this relationship than the public at this present point in time knows? And the president for himself has not explicitly answered the question of whether there is more that the Department of Justice has that he may be aware of that has not been revealed to the public, and whether he would go and take that initiative step to have his attorney general release additional information like this that the Wall Street Journal says that they have seen themselves. Of course, the president suggesting in the phone conversation with the Wall Street Journal that he intended to sue them if they published, in the Wall Street Journal here on this Thursday night deciding to publish despite the threat from the president to sue them.
Angelo, further to Vaughn's point just now about the president's denial, the Justice Department, in fact, Justice Department officials, according to the Wall Street Journal, did not respond to their request for comments or address questions about whether the Trump pages or other pages of the birthday album were part of the agency's recent documents review. That's all the legal stuff that's going to get vetted out over the next 24 plus hours. This story breaking, and to Vaughn's point, it's captured in images that we've seen of this president with partying with Epstein. How does this now play into the ongoing narrative that we started this show talking about tonight? This now drops on the heels of what has been a bruising day for the president with his base.
I mean, part of this, at the center of all of this, these conspiracies, this story, the thing that keeps it churning is that you have a bunch of people that sort of gamify it. They like to find threads and then pull them as much as you can. So when you put anything into there, they pull that thread. So one, I mean, let's assume for a second, the reporting is accurate or not. Let's assume it's accurate. The sentence is kind of creepy. I mean, every day be a wonderful secret. I mean, think what we're talking about here. That people are going to be like, that's weird. I want to hear some answers. Even if it's a joke, you got to give us something. The second thing is his denial is part of the problem. So in his denial, he says, I don't do drawings like that. Well, actually, I can think of 3 off the top of my head that were auctioned. One of him doing a skyline of New York City that sold for 30 grand back in 2017. I can think of another where he did a skyscraper in black Sharpie and then made the sidewalk his name. There was another where he drew a money tree and then somewhere in the roots was Donald. These are things that are easily able to be found. I remember 3. There's got to be more. So it's going to be pretty easy to find Donald Trump's doodles that he was selling at one point or that were getting sold at auction. So this denial that I don't even do these kinds of drawings, there's going to be plenty of proof points to undermine that. And that's part of the issue here to your question, which is that it's just going to give these people something to pull, which is like fresh fuel. And then as it works its way up the chain, it's going to mean more demands for transparency. And then also even the political supporters like Senator Thune, who was out there saying, well, I'm always in favor of more transparency. I trust the president to do the right thing. Now he's going to get asked about it again. And the answer that he's been landed on is no longer going to be sufficient. He's going to have to say something new in light of this. And that's the thing. You never know what's next. And I think that's part of why, they can't just fabricate something and just throw it out there because they don't know what's out there. And there's obviously a lot of material or potential material that they're trying to account for. But this is fresh fuel for the story. That's just how it is.
Angela, to your point about the denial, it is not simply a denial about not having drawn this specific picture or written this specific card. The president saying, I never wrote a picture in my life.
The Epstein story has stayed alive in large part because of Donald Trump's hand-picked Attorney General Pam Bondi. She promised for months that some Epstein files were sitting on her desk waiting to be released to the public. But last week, she put out a 2-page memo effectively declaring the Epstein case closed, saying there was no client list for her Department of Justice to release, which is convenient given the speculation that Trump might be in the so-called client list. Trump wanted an attorney general who would be his lawyer. Bondi has acted that role in other contexts, firing the prosecutors of the January 6 rioters, purging officials who worked on Trump's criminal cases. On Wednesday, Bondi's DOJ fired Maureen Comey, a veteran federal prosecutor who happens to be the daughter of Trump's nemesis, former FBI Director James Comey. Maureen Comey also, get this, helped prosecute Jeffrey Epstein and his associate, Ghislaine Maxwell. In a farewell email to colleagues, Comey wrote, if a career prosecutor can be fired without reason, fear may seep in the decisions of those who remain. Do not let that happen. Fear is the tool of a tyrant wielded to suppress independent thought. Eric Holder served as the Attorney General under President Obama for 6 years, and he currently chairs the National Democratic Redistricting Committee, and he joins me now. It's great to have you on, Mr. Holder, and I wanted to just start with your reaction to the firing of a distinguished line prosecutor, civil servant, and Maureen Comey, and as someone who served in the role of Attorney General, to give a context of how much of a sort of violation or abrogation that is of what has been Department of Justice protocol and practice for decades, as far as I can tell.
Well, I think the dismissal of Maureen Comey is a travesty. It's inconsistent with the way in which Justice Departments under Republican as well as Democratic attorneys general have conducted themselves. But what happened to Maureen is consistent, unfortunately, with what has happened to a number of other career prosecutors and FBI agents who, for whatever reason, got on the bad side of this administration. And this administration, this attorney general, Mr. Beauvais, Todd Blanche, have not had any concern about dismissing people for reasons that are wholly inappropriate and inconsistent with the traditions of the Justice Department. And this is going to come to bite them in the butt, because no one now believes that the Justice Department is doing things in a way that is really not moored to the truth. And when we're talking about this latest revelation, I think people need to ask themselves, in terms of the release of materials, do you really think that Pam Bondi and the Justice Department are making the determination as to what gets released, or because she is the lawyer for Donald Trump as opposed to the American people, or is her client, Donald Trump, and the people in the White House making the ultimate decision. And I think that it is clearly the White House that's making the determination about the release of these materials.
You know, that's such an interesting point I hadn't thought of, that there is a way in which this norm of Department of Justice independence that was quite solid, I think, after Watergate particularly. And there's places where it waxed and waned, the U.S. attorney scandal under George W. Bush and Alberto Gonzales. But that norm, what you're saying is, in some ways kind of works in both directions. Whereas, like, if it's actually the case that there's independence there, if the attorney general does something that brings heat, the president plausibly can say, like, I had nothing to do with it, and that could be true. Right. In this case, it's clear to everyone that that's a ludicrous thing for anyone in this administration to ever say about any Department of Justice action.
Right. By having the Justice Department be, as it should be, an independent part of the executive branch, there's an insulation that the White House gets. Because that has been broached here or breached here, anything that is determined to be normally within the confines or the ability of the Attorney General to make, we all know that it is not the Attorney General who's making final calls. It is, in fact, the White House. And that goes to a whole bunch of things with regard to Epstein, with regard to personnel decisions, with regard to positions that the Justice Department is taking in a variety of cases. It's not DOJ that is making the ultimate calls. It's the White House.
I'm going to ask you one more question on Epstein just while we're on it, and then there's a bunch of other things I want to talk about. Just on this last part, I mean, I know it's preposterous. It doesn't even actually make chronological or logical sense. But since you were the Attorney General under Barack Obama, along with Loretta Lynch, Donald Trump saying that Barack Obama created the Epstein files. Yeah. Any reaction to that?
Oh, yeah. All right. That's absurd. I mean, that's fundamentally absurd. And I think that one of the things that we've got to do is make sure, again, consistent with people's privacy interests, and foremost among those being the victims, release all the materials. Just release all the materials, and then everybody can look at them and make determinations as to who placed things in there, who is engaged, who knew Jeffrey Epstein, what was the nature of their relationship. Just let all the stuff out there. They've talked about this for years when they were out of office and talked about all kinds of conspiracy theories. And now that they're in office and have the ability to release this material, they suddenly have decided that they don't want to do that. And when I say they, that's people in the White House.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff from the Brady room today where Levitt was saying, well, the judges and DOJ, as if like those are obstacles for this administration. Let me ask you about a man that you just mentioned, Emil Bovee, and we were just talking about him with Senator Booker. I mean, this is someone who I think acted in a way at the Department of Justice we've never seen someone act, certainly not in my lifetime, and maybe not since Nixon, and maybe not ever, in terms of how he used the department as a pure tool of the president, seemed to violate court orders, struck this insanely corrupt deal in Eric Adams that led to mass resignation in the office. What does it mean to have this guy as an appellate judge for the country, for the Constitution?
This nomination is a travesty, and people in the Senate who oppose that nomination should do all that they can to make sure that, in fact, he does not get confirmed to a seat on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. This is a guy who dismissed a case against Eric Adams, and when asked, said, well, it doesn't have anything to do with the facts, doesn't have anything to do with the law, but never, in spite of that, we're going to dismiss the case, obviously for political reasons. He was the hatchet man who came to the Justice Department early on and was responsible for the dismissal of well-intentioned, good, well-serving career prosecutors as well as career FBI agents. Involved also with holding materials, creating a Brady violation in a case that ultimately had to be dismissed by those great prosecutors in the Southern District of New York. There is nothing in his record, absolutely nothing in his record, that would justify him getting a Court of Appeals slot. There's a ton of things in his record that render this nomination, as I said, a travesty. And I would hope that people in the Senate, I'm not totally conversant with Senate rules, but I would hope that a senator would put a hold on his nomination and make the Republicans do everything that they have to do in order to place him in what is a lifetime appointment. He doesn't deserve it. He does not deserve it.
One of the issues that you've spent a lot of time thinking about, working on, as I said in the introduction, is redistricting and gerrymandering particularly. And it could sound sort of obscure, but fundamentally what it means is how democratically representative are state legislatures and the United States Congress. And there's something that's happened this week that is sort of an enormous bombshell in its own way, yet another kind of assault on democratic representation and norms as well, which is that Donald Trump has sort of gotten the governor of Texas to call an emergency session after the deadly flood. Not all the bodies are yet recovered, if I'm not mistaken. Over 150 people have died, still many more missing. To call a special session right after this flood with the aim of doing a mid-decade redistricting to net Republicans 5 more seats. Ohio is considering the same thing as well. What does this mean? What is your reaction to that?
Well, here's the deal. Republicans are concerned that as a result of the terrible things that they have done, that with regard to the budget bill, the way in which they are enforcing the immigration law and snatching people off the streets by men who wear masks, the fact that inflation is ticking up, the assault that we see on the rule of law, they're concerned that they're not going to be able to win the 2026 midterms. And they're afraid of the very people who they say they want to represent. And so what they're doing is to try to come up with ways in which they can rig the system, manipulate the system. And so they're looking at Texas, and they want to draw the lines there in such a way that they think that they can guarantee themselves 5 additional seats for Republicans. This is a closely divided House of Representatives, and they think that, well, let's get some insurance there. And they're going to try to do the same thing in Ohio. The redistricting in mid-cycle in Texas is really kind of uncalled for. We have already been suing Texas for a gerrymandered map that they put in place in the beginning of the decade. They're now going to try to make this even worse, and to do so, especially at the expense of people of color. And the Justice Department has given them a letter that tries to give them cover for what it is that they are trying to do. But at the end of the day, this is not just a Texas story. This is a national story, because if they succeed in rigging the system, you'll end up with a House of Representatives that is not representative of the desires of the American people. We're sick and tired of what this administration has been doing.
Let me ask you this. I've asked you this before. I remember when I asked about sort of partisan gerrymandering versus sort of nonpartisan commissions like they have in some states. I think Iowa is one of them. There's other places as well, where I said, look, that may be the ideal situation, but given the world we live in, don't you have to fight fire with fire? Like, shouldn't California, you can draw a 52-0 Democratic map in California. You can. The math is there. You could probably make it work. Should you do that? I don't know. But at a certain point, it does seem to me like deterrence is important from a game theory perspective here, that if Texas and Ohio are going to do it, then some other states step up to do it as well.
Well, what we have stood for is fairness. And I think that people need to understand that fairness will get us into the place where we should be. Now, yeah, the possibility exists that Texas might consider doing something, but I have to say it is not as easy as people think. There is in place there, by virtue of the Constitution in California, an independent commission that draws the lines. What's happening in Ohio with regard to their redistricting is mandated by their state's constitution. So I think we should try to stop that which Texas is trying to do, try to make the process in Ohio a fair one. And we will sue to the extent that they do something that's inconsistent with the Voting Rights Act or any other statute that we can use. But at the end of the day, I don't think that we're going to have the ability to draw a 52-0 map in California. But I think, again, we fight them to try to stop them from doing it. And then if they do it, we take them to court. And what I would say is, if people want to help us, go to text democracy to 36787 and be engaged in this fight with us. Text democracy 36787 and be a part of this effort.
We start tonight with the scandal consuming the Trump White House as MAGA leaders, top Democrats, and nonpartisan journalists demand answers about the Epstein files. This is new and dangerous territory for Donald Trump, because for the first time, he appears unable to control his own base. This morning, D.C. woke up to headlines like these. MAGA revolt. Trump discovers MAGA has no off switch. Trump and MAGA are no longer the same thing. Images of MAGA supporters literally burning their red MAGA hats are going viral online. And all of this comes a day after Trump berated Republicans as, quote, stupid and foolish for wanting more information about the disgraced financier who died by suicide while in federal custody. Today, Trump's secretary was bombarded with Epstein questions at this press conference.
Does the president believe that justice has been served in the Epstein case?
Does he have knowledge or an understanding of what is in the files related to Epstein that have not been released?
Has the White House been directly in touch with some of the MAGA influencers that are still not satisfied?
The president said that he floated the idea of a special prosecutor in the Epstein case. Can you confirm that?
Do you know what the president's reaction was to Mike Johnson saying that he wants additional files released? Was there a conversation with Mike Johnson about that following his comments?
There's been a lot of discussion about the Epstein files and the president's comments yesterday calling it a hoax. Can you clarify which part of the Epstein hoax is the hoax part?
An absolute barrage of questions with no relief in sight. Politico writes this, quote, Trump is like a magician who has locked himself in a straitjacket, only to find that he's lost his ability to maneuver out of it and finds his audience turning on him. Among those now speaking out are Trump's former vice president, Mike Pence, as well as top GOP senators and the MAGA broadcasters.
I think the time has come for the administration to release all of the files regarding Jeffrey Epstein's investigation and prosecution.
Maybe I'm just getting old and forgetting things, but I could have sworn that we had people campaigning, and if I get elected, we're going to release the files, right?
Yeah.
So
yes.
Release the damn files. Get over it.
It's the administration and their handling of this, which is why everyone's talking about it. It didn't have to be handled this way. It's been abysmal.
I am trying to get you to take the political gun out of your mouth. You already blown both your feet off. And now you got it shoved in your mouth. I'm like, will you please take that out of your mouth? You're like, shut up. Don't talk about it. You have put the gun in your mouth and ours collectively. Stop it. Stop it.
And in a rare display of bipartisanship, top Democrats have also gotten in on the act, hammering Trump on the Epstein question.
For years, Donald Trump and the MAGA movement have railed on about the Epstein files. But now, a complete reversal. Trump is straight up gaslighting the American public.
The president had run on a campaign with a promise to expose the Epstein files. Now he and the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, say, nope, nothing to investigate. When it comes to Epstein and sex trafficking, all these claims are just ludicrous.
Amid these calls for greater transparency, there's also new scrutiny on an unexplained move from the Trump DOJ. Maureen Comey, the daughter of former FBI Director James Comey, was until recently a longtime federal prosecutor who worked on a number of high-profile cases, including the prosecution of Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's associate. This week, Trump's DOJ fired her. Critics say it appears to be an effort to intimidate perceived enemies. Today, in a farewell email to her colleagues, Comey said that the DOJ letter informing her of her termination provided no reason for her discharge. In the email, which MSNBC has obtained, Comey issued a sharp warning to her colleagues in the Southern District of New York, saying, quote, if a career prosecutor can be fired without reason, fear may seep into the decisions of those who remain. Do not let that happen. Fear is the tool of a tyrant wielded to suppress independent thought. Instead of fear, let this moment fuel the fire that already burns at the heart of this place, a fire of righteous indignation at abuses of power, of commitment to seek justice for victims, of dedication to truth above all else. And that is where we start tonight. Donald Trump under fire from the MAGA base amid broader warnings about a presidential power grab. Joining me now is Barrett Berger, a former federal prosecutor from the Southern District of New York, and Aisha Mills, political strategist and former resident fellow at Harvard's Kennedy School of Politics. Aisha, you saw Donald Trump's press secretary faced with a barrage of questions over the Epstein files. Why can't Donald Trump figure out how to defuse this bomb?
Because Donald Trump doesn't want to. I mean, here's the thing. I just want to acknowledge for everybody who's watching this that we have literally been on like a week and a half distraction from what's really going on in America right now. Donald Trump is gutting the government. They literally just rescinded $9 billion in foreign aid. They're trying to shut down public broadcasting. They're taking Medicare from people, Medicaid from people. And here's where we are, is we're talking about this. We know that Donald Trump doesn't actually care about the victims, about those poor girls who are human trafficked. I think right now we need to be focusing on actually the victims of this and trying to get justice for them. And that's not something that Donald Trump is ever going to talk about.
I don't disagree, but he is losing his base over this. Like, there are folks in the MAGA faithful who are angry and they are baying for blood. Barrett, do you think the DOJ actually has more information than they're letting on here, and that there's something to these calls for transparency?
Well, I'm sure the DOJ has, thousands and thousands of pages of information that they produced in discovery. But the problem is not all information is sufficient to be released to the public. Here you're going to have hours and hours of child pornography that was captured on these recordings. You're going to have information that identifies victims, that gives personal stuff about them. You're going to have information that was gained through judicial process, like a grand jury, that simply cannot be disclosed according to law. So I think the big problem we have here is one of an explanation, explaining exactly why certain things can't be released, what the basis is. It may not satisfy people who've really had their hearts set on getting their hands on this, but just because they can't see it doesn't mean they should.
Well, that's a great question, Aisha. So there's a lot of information here for lots of different reasons. Much of it likely cannot be released, but we are seeing people online burning their MAGA hats. And these are people who are deeply with the president. It seems like they would be receptive to an explanation, any explanation from this man whom they revere. Why won't this just go away? Why can't they give the explanation?
Well, listen, I think that Donald Trump, we all know, actually, let me not, say, I think Donald Trump is guilty of a variety of things and hasn't been held accountable for them, period. What his base does and our distraction with that is literally that. What I'm interested in, be it Republican or be it Democrat, is why isn't anybody talking about the fact that if they were so riled up about this Epstein case and getting justice for these victims, why is Donald Trump defunding, literally just completely dismantle the Violence Against Women Act? And completely defunded all support for people who have been trafficked, for human trafficking. There's so much that could actually happen that would be with regards to policy that would actually support and protect people that we could be talking about. And right now it just feels more like a political circus that I don't think is going anywhere.
So, Barrett, this is a political circus, and it actually doesn't feel like Donald Trump is necessarily in the middle of it. The one person who does seem to be getting the brunt of all of this is Attorney General Pamela Jo Bondi. How much trouble is she in from this base that's calling for her ouster?
Seemingly a lot. It seems like she still has the support of the president, but as we know, you have the support of the president until you don't. And right, to Aisha's point, the fact that anyone who actually cares about protecting victims and standing up for them and doing something about sex trafficking, the person who cared the most about doing that was the person they just fired. Maureen Comey, more than anyone else, was somebody who not only, talked the talk of wanting to protect victims, but spent the last decade doing the hard work to do that, not just in the Epstein case, but as we just saw over the last 2 months in the Combs case. This is somebody who's dedicated...
This is the P. Diddy trial.
Correct. Yeah. So this is somebody who has just dedicated her career to standing up for victims, to doing the work that people are talking about. And the fact that they've fired her while also saying we care about this is just wildly inconsistent.
And keep in mind that this president has spent most of his life trying to avoid accountability for the things that he's done against women. So here we are.
Well, let's go to Maureen Comey. Barrett, what do you make of this? This seems to be a very unusual step, an unorthodox step, to fire a career prosecutor who has never had any complaints about her performance, but she also happens to be the daughter of someone who has, even in the last couple of months, been the target of a lot of ribbing from the Trump loyalists. What's actually going on here?
I mean, on one hand, it seems very consistent with the pattern that we've seen. We've seen plenty of not only DOJ folks being fired, but, you know, across the government, we've seen sort of these widespread. This one's different because it is so individually targeted to her with really no connection to her actual work as a prosecutor, at least what we know so far. I mean, it seems like from her resignation email, this was totally unexpected from her, and the letter gives no explanation other than, you know, citing to Article 2, which is just, you know, the executive's, I guess, authority to do so, but really gives no analysis or rationale for this. Right. This is really, it feels just so personal. And I said before, it just, to me, strikes me more because of her last name than anything that she has ever done as a prosecutor.
As a former prosecutor yourself, what do you make of her farewell email to her colleagues at the Southern District of New York?
It was a wonderful email. It was, you know, very righteous, talked a lot about what everyone, not just in the Southern District, but I think throughout U.S. attorneys' offices in the country, what we sort of embodied, which was this idea of prosecuting cases without fear or favor.
And the Southern District, that has been its credo for a long time, the sovereign district of New York.
And you need that ethos because what you're doing is prosecuting people regardless of their political party. You know, the Southern District of New York has brought cases against Republicans as often as it's brought cases against Democrats. It's brought cases against powerful people and people with no power. So they really live up to this credo. And the fact that she cites that and really seems to be saying this is now in jeopardy is pretty striking.
Back with this breaking news on Capitol Hill. A dramatic moment just happened in the Senate Judiciary Committee. Democrats walking out of a hearing on the nomination of Trump official Emil Bovee to a federal judgeship. Take a look. This was just moments ago.
To pass jurisdiction and pass precedent. Why are you doing this? This is outrageous.
This is a kangaroo court. That's all we have here,
This
Mr.
is
Chairman.
wrong. To violate your own rules without going by the mandates of the parliamentarian. This is unbelievable. There's a way to do this. If you want to force this through, if you want to ram this through, there's a way to do it in accordance to the rules as spelled out by the parliamentarian. It is simple. It is clear. There's a pathway to achieve what you're trying to achieve. But, sir, this lacks decency. It lacks decorum. It shows that you do not want to simply hear from your colleagues. This is absolutely wrong. And, sir, this is to me one of those moments where we are not showing common respect for each other on both sides. I have sat here when we were in the majority and listened to my colleagues' arguments, listened to their passionate statements, and then we voted. This is not that. This is us simply trying to rush through one of the most controversial nominees we've had under this presidential administration. Sir, God bless America. You are a good man. You are a decent man. Why are you doing this? What is Donald Trump saying to you that are making you do something which is violating the decorum of this committee, the rules of this committee, the decency and the respect that we have each other to at least hear each other out? I've sat through so many long speeches of my colleagues, heard their objections, listened with sincerity to try to see what their arguments are. But we are not doing that. Sir, this is wrong, and you know it. There are some people on this committee who are the least firebrand people, and they've walked out. Some of the least controversial people in the Senate, some of the people that worked the hardest to find bipartisan common ground have just walked out of this committee. And you don't even seem to care, but I know you do. I know your heart, Senator Grassley. This is wrong. I know the kind of person you are, and you know this is wrong. This is not necessary. What is another half an hour to allow senators to be heard? It's what the Constitution mandates. It's the ideals of the United States Senate. The world's most deliberative body should take a decent amount of time to deliberate. But here we're not doing that. Here we are jamming this through with some sense of false urgency. It's one thing not to hear from whistleblowers. It's another thing not to hold another hearing, but to not even allow my colleagues to have their moment to speak against this justice is just wrong. And I know you know this. I know you know this. The only time this rule has ever been overturned by both parties was done when one minority was trying to pull some stunt to stop the committee from hearing. This is not that. This is not the 2-hour rule. This is a basic element of the ideals of this committee, sir. It is the basic understanding of having debate and deliberation. It's a basic understanding of we can listen to each other even if we disagree, that we should have time and space and a forum to listen. Sir, this is just wrong in every way. It is wrong in every single way. This is an abuse of power. It's an undermining of the well-being and the integrity of this Senate and this committee that I for so long, I've been so honored to be a part of. This is wrong, sir, and I join with my colleagues in leaving. This is a sham.
Vote.
This is wrong.
We'll report.
We're better than this.
Pratt to the floor. Now we'll have to vote on these nominees for U.S. Attorney because...
Okay, let's find out what exactly went down. I want to bring in our Capitol Hill correspondent, NBC's Julie Sirkin. Also joining us is former Democratic Senator Heidi Heitkamp of North Dakota. Julie, what a moment there. I mean, the emotion and the outrage that we just heard, it got personal with Senator Booker appealing to Chuck Grassley, the chair of this committee. What exactly went down before that?
Yeah, Anna, telling him, I know you, Senator Grassley, I know you are a decent man, I know you are a decent human. What did Donald Trump, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but he asked Grassley, what did Donald Trump say to you to make you violate the rules of this committee, the decorum? That is what Cory Booker had said. What I was so struck by, Anna, is that while Booker was talking, they continued voting. And what the Senate Judiciary Committee is meeting to vote on today is a whole slate of nominees for various judicial positions. The most controversial of them, Emil Bovee, who is somebody who works for the Trump administration. He is somebody who is very close to the president. And Democrats tried to slow walk his nomination intentionally because they've heard from whistleblowers who they say prove that Bovee had intended to tell the Trump administration to essentially defy court orders, especially when it comes to deporting illegal undocumented immigrants to countries they have no relation to. And so this is a moment where Booker tried to use to debate, to have extra time to talk about these nominees. We already know that he was going to try to stop particularly Bovee's nomination. But you saw there that Chuck Grassley, who was the Republican chairman of that panel, continued through their votes. Anyway, Booker and Democrats, all of them walking out without even finishing the votes. This committee is still meeting, of course, and with Republicans in the majority, they don't necessarily need Democrats present, but still just a stunning moment, especially in this committee that has seen, of course, flashpoints before, but generally the Republicans and Democrats do tend to work well together on this panel.
Senator, what's your reaction to what we just witnessed?
Well, my reaction is that this was a moment for the Democrats to really, state their case against this nominee. And the reason why it's important is there's big rumors in Washington that if there's a vacancy in the Supreme Court, this person may, in fact, be nominated for the Supreme Court. And so to basically have this day where you can speak to the public and say, this is why he is a bad nominee. This is why he's unqualified for this position. And he's unqualified for any position. He also is very controversial in the legal profession. Many Republicans outside of this committee and outside of the complicit Republican Senate are telling them, do not nominate him. He will be a thorn in your side going forward. And do not, basically push him through. They're going to get their chance on the floor. I doubt that Thune's going to shut down debate. But this is bigger than just this nomination. And this was the moment to basically state their case against this nominee. And Chuck Grassley, who knows better, as Booker said, he knows better, did not give them that opportunity. And I think for everybody listening, you say, why not? Because there's so much evidence against this guy. There is so much to say about this this guy. Grassley does not want that in the public record. And it's just bad business. And when people say, oh, you know, the Senate, there are people you can work with, Chuck Grassley's been that person you can work with. And this is really, I think, from him backing away from his support of IGs, from him basically doing the bidding of the administration, he has really injured his reputation with a lot of us who think very highly of Chuck.
Emil Bovee, you mentioned his background. He was, a lot of people might remember him on the defense team of Donald Trump here in New York before Trump was elected when it came to his prosecution and criminal charges. And he clearly won over Donald Trump in that moment as his defender. He also now, as a high-ranking DOJ official, was involved in dismissing the corruption charges against the New York City Mayor Eric Adams, which led to a bunch of resignations within the Justice Department and the U.S. Attorney's Office related to that. He also has been alleged to have suggested disregarding court orders, which Julie touched on, according to some whistleblower accounts. So that is in part what makes him so controversial as a nominee. What else can Democrats do at this point? Is there anything as the minority party for them, any other cards for them to play?
Well, obviously, picking off a couple more moderate Republicans. You know, you're always asking people to step up, and it's been a calamity because there aren't a lot of courageous Republicans who will push back against this kind of nominee or push back against bad legislation. And so, you know, the only thing you have right now is the bully pulpit. And as this nominee moves to the floor of the Senate, I doubt that Thune will shut down debate. There will be a back and forth. There's always opportunity for filibuster. And so there is going to be the day in court. And I think they're just trying to figure out in the majority, how do they handle something that's this red hot? And like I said, there is tons of people on the outside, not just members of the minority. There's Republican attorneys who are saying this is a very bad choice. And again, because there is this rumor that he would be front row and center for a nominee for the Supreme Court, it's critically important that you make the case right now, because we heard over and over again, if you don't like this person, why did you put him on the circuit court? Why did you give him a district court appointment? And so the Democrats are naturally going to be very, very hesitant to move anyone onto into a position, a point, you know, where they approve them or are part of that, where they don't make the case against them right now.